Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. Thank you for hanging around. Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest this week.
Melissa Norris is all about living homegrown, handmade, and modern day homesteading. She is an author, blogger, and a podcaster. Welcome to the program, Melissa.
Thanks. Excited to be here, guys.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join not only Holly and myself, but all of our listeners from across the country that tune in to our program.
Yeah, I love talking about this and helping other people, so I'm ready.
So let's start with this. What is a modern day homesteader, and can anyone be a modern day homesteader? I know with this type of situation that we're currently living in, many people are figuring out that they're something that maybe they never knew they were, to a prepper or a homesteader or a survivor. I don't know what we want to deem that as, but what is a modern day homesteader?
So I classify a modern day homesteader as someone who is looking to be as self-sufficient as possible, and that is growing their own food, making homemade items, not buying it from the store, but still using modern things to a degree. So it doesn't mean you have to live totally off-grid, that you aren't connected to society, that you live way up on a mountaintop and that you never come down. And so, yeah, anybody can be a modern day homesteader, because honestly, homesteading is a mindset first, and you can homestead anywhere that you live. Now, if you live in an apartment, high five to my apartment homesteaders, you might not be able to raise livestock. You might not have acreage to do as much as someone else, but there's all things. Everybody, no matter where you live, there's things that you can do. And for a lot of people, that's going to start in the kitchen. And a lot of people right now are realizing this. There's not homemade bread on the store shelves, amen, but there may not be bread even on the store shelves. There may not be some of those in things that people are used to buying, or for states who have shelter at home things, they're not supposed to be going out to the stores as often. And so people are having to learn to make homemade versions more so than maybe they ever have in the past. So anybody can start in the kitchen with homesteading and creating more of their own food and doing it from scratch. But even in apartments, you can do a vegetable garden in pots. It may be a few herbs just on the windowsill if you don't even have a balcony, but you can do something.
And that's the thing. I was watching a YouTube video of a homesteaders in the Ozark area, and they said this really hasn't affected us because we don't go to town. We only go to town about once every 45 days anyway. So it really is nothing new to us, and we work from home, so nothing new. But there are people now realizing in the state that we are in, the conditions that, I have to buy more. I need to prepare, because otherwise, prior to this, just went to the store every other day to grab a few things and never was, hey, I need to buy enough for a week or 2 weeks or X amount of weeks in advance.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people are running into that, and then they're like, okay, we want to have this item. It's not at the store. I can't go to the store to get it. And so they're now looking for ways to make it at home. And, we live pretty rurally, and I try not to go to the store, usually like 2 times a month. And I've got kids and things, and normally they have outside activities, so I'll be going to different sporting events. But my goal is to only go grocery shopping once or twice a month, and that's mainly for perishables. One of the only things that we're not self-sufficient with here on our homestead is I don't have a dairy animal. We raise all of our own meat and most of our vegetables and fruit, but I do go and get milk and cream and butter because I consider those definite essentials. But yeah, it's having, stocking up. And you really don't have to stock up on as much stuff as people think. If you've just got some basics, there is so much that you can make with just a few basic things like flour. You don't even have to have store-bought yeast. You can use flour and water to make a sourdough starter and make your own homemade yeast. And then if you've got water and salt, you can make quite a few different types of breads. And then if you just have a little bit of fat and an egg, maybe a little bit of butter or coconut oil, you're pretty much set to bake and make almost anything that you would normally be buying from the store.
That's pretty amazing. Now, even if somebody lives in an apartment or has very little space to grow, what can they do to have their own little homestead where they do have some self-sufficiency with vegetables or some fresh vegetables?
Yeah, well, one of the things is, and almost everybody can do some type of herbs. Herbs are great because you can do them in a very small pot. I've actually grown basil in the winter months just inside a quart-sized mason jar. So I say that you can do herbs, and herbs are great because they offer so much flavor for being a small plant. You usually only need a couple of teaspoons, maybe a tablespoon of fresh to flavor an entire dish, but it will really, one, it gives you some fresh greens and nutrients, and you can do it in small amounts of space. And you can get a harvest relatively fast with things like basil. You plant them from seed, and they're going to be providing for you within a month or so. Some other things that you can do if you live in an apartment or even in a small space, and we even do it in the winter months because we're so far north here that I can do very few things with that, even with cold frames, is microgreens and sprouts. So you can grow sprouts in a mason jar with just some water and have sprouts, which are fresh greens, ready to go in just 3 days' time, no dirt. And microgreens you can plant in just a shallow, I just use old lettuce containers, and you buy lettuce from the store, and they have those like clamshell tops. I save those, and you can grow microgreens in them. You can use a bread pan. You just need about 2 inches of dirt, and you spread your seeds on top and you water it. And usually within 2 to 3 weeks, you've got microgreens that you can start harvesting and putting on sandwiches and in salads, into casseroles and soups. But it provides you with those fresh greens. And you don't even really need a grow light. A sunny windowsill will work for microgreens.
Now, for microgreens and sprouts, what varieties of plants are we utilizing, or can it be anything, or is there certain guidelines that one needs to follow?
Yeah, so the beautiful thing with doing microgreens is you can really do any type of seed. A lot of people like to do sunflower seeds. Peas are great because if you do pea seeds, those are one of the few microgreens that you can clip off the tops and they will continue to produce for you. A lot of the microgreens like the sunflower seeds, broccoli is another one because broccoli sprouts have so much nutrients packed into them and vitamins. But really any seed that you want, you can do. They're not going to say like microgreen specific. You're just harvesting them when they are a small green and just have a few leaves on the top and they're tiny and tender, which is why we call them microgreens. So really anything. If you like beet greens, you might want to do beet seeds. Some people like a little bit of radish or even mustard greens because they can have a little bit of a bite and more flavor to them. But really, pretty much any seed will work.
Okay, so you have a new book called The Family Garden Plan. What is the book about, and do you have a particular notable part of the book or your favorite part, something you want, a notable part?
Yeah, I do. My new book is The Family Garden Plan, and it teaches you how to grow a year's worth of sustainable and healthy food. So one of my favorite parts and one of readers' favorite parts is the charts. So I have charts in there that walk you through exactly how many plants per person of both fruit and vegetables you need to plant and grow if your goal is to have a year's worth of that food. And so especially in this time right now when a lot of people are really looking to grow more of their own food than they ever have before, it's perfect because you don't have to guess how many plants do I actually need if I wanted to not buy this from the store and be self-sufficient with this item. All of the worksheets and the charts are there for you. So you come away with a plan of exactly how much you need for your family. And it all helps you tailor it to your growing area and your growing space. So it's universal in that, but it teaches you how to customize it all for exactly the location that you are in.
Now, I don't want to categorize it, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. So it's kind of like a modern day Victory Garden plant to chart what you need and how much to grow.
Yes, that is a perfect way to put it. You nailed it. It is. Yes.
Well, let's talk about this. You grew up in a homestead, but your spouse did not. What advice do you have for those who are in that mixed-matched relationship of somebody who understands how to prep, but the other one kind of grew up in the city and is not familiar with that type of lifestyle?
Yeah. So my advice to new vegetable growers, or even if you, like you said, maybe you have someone who's got more experience and one is not, is one, not to overwhelm yourself. And I know I'm talking about growing a year's worth of food, so that might sound almost contradictory, but really focus on a couple of key crops And how you pick those key crops is, for me, is it's vegetables or fruits that you eat, your family likes, and you eat on a really consistent basis, because that's going to have the most impact, one, on supplying your own food, because it's something you eat all the time and you know your family likes. So I narrow it down that way. And then secondly, and I go over this in the book as well, is picking those crops from those that you eat a lot that are going to grow well, easily in your area and in your climate. So if you're really north, trying to do sweet potatoes is probably not going to be your best bet, because you're likely not warm enough. I'm not warm enough for sweet potatoes. Vice versa. You know, if you live in the south, then you're probably not going to want to do something like snow peas or things that really like those cooler weather. So people, myself included, we don't have, you know, a lot of extra time, even in with the stay-at-home orders that we're in. And you don't want to be having plants that you really have to struggle to keep alive and battle. You want things that are going to flourish in your area. And when you have success and it's things your family likes, then that gets people who maybe haven't done it before, maybe they're not quite as on board with it, then they start to get excited. And if it's easy and it's not something everybody's dreading or battling against, it's easier to pull everybody in. And then it makes the biggest impact as well on your grocery bill. And you're eating those homegrown nutrients and those foods that have higher levels of vitamins and nutrients, which we all are looking to stay healthier right now. And homegrown provides that, because you harvest it right from the vine and you cook it. And the longer any food has been picked and is shipping or sitting on a store shelf, it degrades and begins to lose its nutrients.
And you bring up a good point. One, grow what your family eats and what you eat the most. But also, this might not be the year to experiment with 15 new varieties of this, that, or another. You need to stick with what you know has been very successful and prolific, and utilize that for this year.
Yeah. This year is not the year to gamble. Yeah, definitely stick with those staples.
Okay. Now, where can we find out more about you and your other books?
Yeah, well, at my website, which is melissaknorris.com, as well as my podcast, which is the Pioneering Today podcast, is another great resource to get information and to find out more things as well. And I forgot to say, my book, The Family Garden Plan, at thefamilygardenplan.com, the book website, you can get a free copy of that chart on how much to plant per person, and you can snag it there.
Well, there you go. And just because it says homesteader in the title of what you do does not mean that urban or city dwellers should shy away from this book and the information you have to provide for everybody.
Oh, absolutely not. This really is your game plan. It's going to walk you through every step from planning, like we talked about today, to then actually planting it, harvesting it, every single step along the way. This walks you through full season.
Well, Melissa, we greatly appreciate you taking time out of your very hectic schedule there and informing and enlightening Holly and myself and all of our listeners about things and how to plant for what we want and how much to plant for a family, which is very important this time of year in this situation that we're currently living in.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on and for helping others to grow their own food, guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you. For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.